プレイヤーとクリエイターの心が通じ合うと不思議なことが起こります。ゲーム画面が呪いの鏡みたいに点滅して、プレイヤーの心も光り始めて、鏡と共鳴するように点滅して。
Wow, Toby, that's beautiful. But also really ominous. Sure hope that doesn't happen to me in high school. So yeah, I got Undertale death rate into being an indie dev. Started off in the fan game pipeline, of course, did not go well, but then rebounded into working on my own projects in Unity, and little by little met some other game dev enthusiasts through my school, got into game jams, and eventually stumbled into a long-term project that is now slated for early access release in about 1 month. Dear God. Having spent the last 3 years working full to part-time on a game while still not having actually released a game often leaves me with an awkward feeling of professional amateurism. We've got a good thing going, but keeping it going is still mostly a matter of improvisation, and if there's one nugget of truth I've gleaned from the last 3 years, it's that the fate of a small team indie dev is not so much to wear many hats as the entire haberdashery. You might start in a project driven by a ravening passion to program punchy twin-stick shooter mechanics, then wake up 6 months later and realize that you can no longer recall memories of your life before the tile map layering arc started, or the save file serialization arc, or the scene transition protocol arc, or the arc where you design exactly one miscellaneous options menu for each demon in the legions of Paimon. Even the most modestly scoped game project will quickly give way to a vast ocean of proverbial wheels, and it's your task as developer to choose which to reinvent and what to do about the ones that you don't. I wonder what the answer could be. On an unrelated note, is it just me or is intellectual property theft kind of a topic these days? There's the 25 million VOH Bomber Guy plagiarism video, of course, and its full multi-stage nuclear decay chain of Fallout, and that's all well and good. Cases seemed egregious, too bad about that cave video, I thought it was pretty funny. But then 9 months later you get, like, Undertale plagiarized a Swedish death metal band Nightmare video, and I can't help but worry if some people have taken this in a direction that is no longer healthy. One that is perhaps paranoid, legalistic, and hostile to an organic creative process. While the aforementioned video is a dismally misguided clown show, it's dead on about one thing. Toby Fox loves stealing shit, taking inspiration. Accusing his work of being derivative is like accusing the Zodiac Killer of murder. My dude, that is his favorite thing to talk about. In the official music booklet, in the localization guide, in the promotional livestream where he announced Deltarune Chapter 2.
I was trying to channel Secret of Evermore, like Secret of Mana. Definitely inspired by Buzz Buzz. Here comes the big illusion of Gaia reference, like Chrono Trigger.
Link to the Past.
Another illusion of Gaia reference, very inspired by Super Mario RPG.
I take an Earthbound Zero reference anywhere I can get it.
Inspired by Where's Waldo, that Squidward.
I'd frankly be impressed if Spirit of Justice managed to plagiarize an obscure death metal band, considering how busy it already was ripping off every song in Touhou. Which Toby admits, proudly, in a dedicated magazine article. In all public communications, this man projects the image of a starry-eyed fanboy who will gleefully appropriate any and all ideas not nailed down by litigation, and then brag about it in fluent Japanese. And this, I believe, is the best lesson in game dev I have ever learned. Case in point, I stole his entire audience. And then his IGF award. Still trying to process that one. Anyway, as an homage to Senpai Fox, I thought I'd try a bit of an experiment. A different sort of devlog, where instead of espousing all the wonderful and clever ideas myself and the team have thought up to improve RAM, I instead lock myself in a sort of digital confessional and take you on a tour through all the clever ideas we didn't come up with. All the inspirations, derivations, homages and iterations, references, deferences, influence, and I don't know why I wrote the sentence like this. Welcome to Random Access Mayhem, the most derivative game ever made. Besides all the other ones. For those unfamiliar, RAM's a top-down roguelike shooter, with the distinguishing feature of having no player character, meaning you continually swap control between enemies' bodies instead of controlling any sort of defined protagonist. Now, when it comes to the topics of top-down roguelikes and inspirational lineage, there can only be one starting point. The original. The primeval fountainhead after which the entire genre was named. The Binding of Isaac 2011. The fuck are those? Are those games? Isaac is the roguelike that got me into roguelikes, and without it there's a decent chance RAM wouldn't exist. But surprisingly, the specific influences Isaac's had on RAM are mostly evident in what we didn't do. Let me explain. Even working with very small teams, game dev is an inescapably collaborative process. Ideas have to be proposed, examined, and agreed upon in bulk volume, and the lingua franca through which these conversations are held is reference. Describing a game as the Sekiro born of Cybersilk Song will get you dirty looks in a video essay, but in hour 3 of a Discord brainstorming sesh, fuck if it isn't concise. Many early debates about Ram's direction quickly boil down to the shorthand of Isaac-like versus Hades-like, sprawling exploration and backtracking versus linear, streamlined combat gauntlets. I was originally pushing for a much more Isaac-like version of RAM, with large interconnected floors and objectives dotted procedurally throughout, but after much pushback from Toby, RAM's co-creator, and different guy from Toby Fox by the way, it became clear that Isaac's design encouraged methodical and knowledge-based gameplay in a way that didn't gel with RAM's origins as a hyperactive robot meat grinder sim. In the end, we opted for a more linear structure to keep the focus on the combat. That's not to say there's no Isaac DNA in RAM, but the way its influence manifests is surprisingly specific. Bullet physics. Compared to the Adderall-flavored Zerma Breakcore mix stim toy combat of many modern indies, Isaac's 4-directional tear duct foo seems almost pastoral, but these 1300 hours didn't come from nowhere. Isaac's shooting has nuance. Tears launched from Isaac's face inherit his momentum in a physically intuitive way, allowing skilled players to thread them around obstacles or boost the range with a running start. An entire playable enemy type in RAM, the Router, was constructed around pushing Isaac's projectile physics to their logical extreme, with even more momentum transfer and velocity-based damage scaling. Okay, Isaac's a good warm-up, but it's also kinda softball pissy baby shit. Thanking Isaac for inspiring your roguelike is like thanking your parents during an Oscar speech. I said this was a confessional, and I just got word from the Pope that it's time to talk about Hades. Do you know how much Hades is in this game? Why choose from a list of 3 upgrades? Hades did it. Why handmade combat arenas? Hades did it. Why optional difficulty modifiers? Hades did it. Because Slay the Spider did it. Why roguelite meta progression? Hades. Why talk to the bosses? Could have been Undertale, but Hades. Why have a hub area between runs with ongoing storylines and a diegetic respawn system? Because Hades pioneered a subgenre in which that is a thing. If ever there was a game deserving to be branded as a Hades-like, aside from Hades 2, it would probably be RAM. This wasn't, however, the result of a premeditated scheme to mimic the newest hottest roguelike to optimize our market viability or some shit. No, it's because Toby and I both just really fucking like Hades. Compared to other popular roguelikes, it's the one whose design goals seem to align most closely with our own ambitions for RAM, and so for many broad strokes decisions, it was the de facto touchstone. Plus, if you're making a roguelike after 2018 that tries to tell a story beyond item descriptions, good luck not ripping off Hades. Its reactive dialogue system is an idea so good and so widely applicable that it feels actively regressive to not grab the torch and run with it. With all that said in its praise though, Hades is actually far from my favorite roguelike to play on a second-to-second blow-to-blow basis. Just personal preference, but the motions of combat have a certain prefab stiffness to me that kills the mood, and the dash-based evasion gives way just a hair too easily to button mashing. When it comes to my proclivities, and it does because I'm the one programming the mechanics, the keyword for satisfying combat is kinetic, and not the visual novel kind. I mean motion, impact, that umami hit of chaos that comes from injecting a combat loop with basic physics simulation. It's the minigun pushing you back in Nuclear Throne, it's the explosion boosting an ultra kill, and the inexorable lurch of Katana Zero's sword slash. It's also the Binding of Isaac tier physics that I mentioned earlier. So many systems and games exist to support other systems, but Newton's second law is something atomic. It is inherently fun to punch a guy into another guy so hard that they both explode. Speaking of ultra kill, robots shooting other robots? Sounds familiar. Well, yes and no. The robots themselves just came from a need to explain the body swapping mechanic. The Steel Toe's self-parry attack though, well, let's just say it learned from the best. But when it comes to ultra kill, the main vector of influence is, of course, the style system, or as RAM calls it, fitness. I've talked about RAM's take on a style system extensively in a previous devlog, so I won't repeat myself here, but those who watch that devlog will know that style doesn't play quite the same role in RAM as in your standard DMC or Ultra Kill. In RAM, style is legal tender, the currency you expend to buy upgrades over the course of each run. And this system was directly inspired by Risk of Rain. 2 to be specific. 1 was a visual reference for some of the character designs, but 2 is the one I actually play. Much like Isaac, Risk of Rain is a game that I once envisioned RAM being much more similar to, roaming a large open map, finding points of interest, and farming respawning enemies for upgrades until you were strong enough to fight the level boss. This tied more into RAM's roots as a horde survival game jam project, but then Toby got really into Neon White for a while, and we ended up going for handmade encounters over a procedural enemy trickle, meaning that the number of enemies in each level would be fixed, meaning that we had to find a new metric beyond kill count to determine the player's earnings. All of this eventually coalesced into buying upgrades with style points. Let's talk visuals.
The graphics.
As discussed in the previous devlog, Hyperlight Drifter was something of an aesthetic poster child for RAM. If you ask me, it's the best looking game ever made. Sorry, Owlboy. But on top of being a guideline we could use to repeatedly tell our art team, "Make it look like this!" it also served as a reference manual for many less obvious aspects of game visuals. How does a 2D tile map simulate elevation? How many facing directions do character animations need? How do you make a bottomless pit look bottomless? How can restricting camera movement improve the visuals of an area? Time and time again, I'd find myself running into these questions and booting up the same old Hyperlight Drifter save file just to wander around the mountain for a few minutes and observe details that I never would have noticed while playing. Not all of these Hyperlight lessons could be put into practice in RAM. Crazy thought, some things are easier in theory than in practice. But this approach of just booting up games and looking at them to sanity check minor decisions is something that I swear by. Do a character's feet need to keep walking if they move during an attack animation? Well, Hollow Knight says no. Is it okay to just spawn enemies out of thin air? Risk of Rain 2 does this constantly and I've literally never noticed. How wide should a dialogue box be?
No, Hades got a good dialogue box.
As valuable as creativity and experimentation are, there's many systems and games that succeed on the merit of not being noticed. And in these cases, unless you have a really good idea to change up the formula, following precedent is often not just the easiest, but also the best solution.
This shit has been solved. You don't have to be stressing out over it. Just do what everyone else does.
I've hit most of the big topics, so let's mop up the rest. Inspiration doesn't have to mean a deep, formative experience. If you play a wide variety of games, you're going to notice a wide variety of cool one-off things that stick in your brain, and I want that to be reflected here too. 1. Can ongoing background conversations work without voice acting? Yes, thank you, Night in the Woods. 2. Mysterious Mind Palace tutorial intro with a condescending narrator. Thank you, Hotline Miami. 3. Fishing minigame, start with Stardew and build from there. 4. Leading into each enemy type's distinct personality, little bit of TF2. 5. Cuckoo's interior decorator cheered when Stray won Best Debut Indie. 6. Shopkeeper whomst won't shut up. I wonder if they'd be into ska. 7. Daily challenge runs, that one's Toby's baby and he cites Returnal. 8. 2 health pools, one regenerating, one not. Thank you, Halo Rock Galactic. 9. Hold tab for more UI. Oops, that's Isaac again. Also, F is a valid full screen hotkey. 10. Unlockable skins. Those are fully original, don't worry about it. Now, after all that, you may have noticed that a certain elephant in the room remains unaddressed. What about the swapping? The central standout selling point mechanic, the one in the tagline, the one so many other design choices sprawled out from like the CPU and the motherboard. What inspired the swapping? Well, this one's a big deal, so before telling you, I'll go through a list of games that people have guessed inspired RAM swapping mechanic, but actually didn't. 1. Super Mario Odyssey. 2. Super Hot. 3. Clone Drone in the Danger Zone. 4. Headlander. 5. Crawl. 6. Mow Astray. So, what's left? What's the inspiration? Who did we steal from to define our game's central raison d'etre? No one. Like, literally nothing inspired it. It is, dare I say it, an original idea that Toby and I both independently had incubating in our brains long before we ever met and realized our shared vision. And this is, largely, why I feel so comfortable sitting here and shriving myself of all these borrowed ideas. Swapping was the wheel RAM chose to reinvent, and it's also the main one propelling the car. Despite Toby Fox's nigh evangelical devotion to explaining just how many games Undertale is cobbled together from, Undertale itself isn't remembered as an Earthbound fan game or a Touhou ripoff. It's the fresh elements, the twists on the formula, preoccupations and personality of its author that make the game notable and define its lasting image in the minds of fans. If there's any concise thesis I want this video to convey, it's that it doesn't take that much to make a game feel fresh. Sometimes one good idea is enough if it's given room to grow and breathe and infect the infrastructure around it, to force innovation in its service and to contextualize the use of those elements which do not innovate. If the purpose of a game is to rehash the ideas of others, to quickly and efficiently build a simulacra of something popular in lieu of any intrinsic vision or creative impulse, then sure, you could reasonably write that off as opportunistic slop. But in reality, and this could be projection on my part, I think it's very rare for anyone who actually cares about their medium to operate this way, and if they are, then it's pretty easy to tell. Outside of these cynical cases, getting stuck stressing about whether every little part of your game is original can be a real mind trap, because if you look hard enough, nothing will be. It's worth noting that even the body swapping, a mechanic that I have personally wanted to make a game about since childhood, could have been taken from a laundry list of other games that we heard about afterward. Would RAM really be any different of a game if instead we'd started from the goal of iterating on Mario Odyssey's half-baked enemy capture system? I certainly don't think it would be intrinsically worse. When Toby Fox went on that esoteric monologue about games becoming cursed mirrors that change their players' hearts forever, I know better than most just how sincere that message actually was. Inspiration isn't always a gentle thing. Sometimes a piece of media can just happen to you, and when it does, it feels like your brain was rewritten overnight. It becomes your obsession, shifts your worldview, and in the most demonstrable, matter-of-fact sense, changes your life. In the wake of my own 2-year-long mentally cataclysmic Undertale phase, it was hard not to feel in some way that the game owned me, that a part of my soul had broken off while playing and lodged itself somewhere deep in Sans' couch, never to be seen again. Anything I made afterward would be indelibly tainted by Undertale's influence, whether I liked it or not. And I think part of the reason why Toby Fox being open with his inspirations is so important to me is that knowing how unoriginal his work was eventually let me take the havoc Undertale wreaked on my mental state and treat it as a challenge. If a game was going to march into my life, bulldoze my brain chemistry, and reform my whole ass self in its image, then I was going to make damn good use of that image. I didn't need to show perpetual deference through fan media. I didn't need to keep borrowing ideas and worrying about getting them scuffed up while I used them. As Mr. Fox himself proved, I could just steal shit. And that's what I've meant this whole time by stealing. It has nothing to do with morality and even less to do with legality. If you're making games in a way that's getting you sued, then you have problems that a YouTube pep talk can't solve. It's about pulling ideas from your influences with the confidence that your ideas are strong enough to subsume them, that you can participate in a work's legacy without being the work or belonging to it. It's this cascading reuse of creativity that allows genres to form and propagate. It allows mechanics to be iterated on and perfected over time until they're ready to be deconstructed and ground into landfill for the next wave of ideas to rest atop. It legitimizes the workflow of falling in love with a game and writing it a love letter. So, to Toby Fox's message about games' capacity to change their players' lives, I would add an unofficial addendum, which should in no way be construed as legal advice. If a game's screen ever flashes at you like a cursed mirror and smites you with inspiration, take its shit, riff on it, remix it, do it better, do it worse but different. Have respect but not reverence. Butcher it, break it down, study it. Take what you like and rip out what you don't, then fill the gaps with yourself. Your thoughts, your perspective, your fixations, your aesthetic. Rearrange the skeleton to your liking and hang your vision over its bones like a ghoulish monument that says, I can do this too. And then say thank you, but don't apologize. I know it may seem like a left turn to suddenly go on about my enthusiasm for ripping off Toby Fox when so far in the video Undertale has barely come up as an influence for RAM, but there's a simple reason for that. The games of mine that Undertale really inspired haven't been made yet, and there's no guarantee that I'll ever get to make them. For as far as we've come with RAM, for all the incredible luck it's taken to get us here, RAM is still a debut project. It has no external funding, no marketing budget, and until it launches in November, we won't know if it'll have revenue. If it seems from the outside looking in that RAM has already made it, please trust me when I say that nothing could be further from the truth. There's still a shit ton that has to go right before we can declare the Xylem Studios' dream a reality. And so, if you've listened all the way up to here in the video, if you've been following our devlogs, if you like what our project has to offer, if you want to help it find the success that so few fully independent games reach, there will literally never be a more opportune time to do so than after this video's launch. Starting mid-October, the RAM demo will be shown to the world through Steam's Next Fest event, and the amount of visibility it receives from this is heavily influenced by the number of wish lists it gets in the week leading up to the festival. It could be the biggest marketing opportunity the game's ever had, or we could get buried under Funko Pop shovelware and achieve nothing. It sounds absurd, and it is, because of course it is, it's fucking game dev, but that outcome depends completely on how many people watch this video, click the link in the description, and wishlist the game, which to be clear does not cost money, it's just a button you click. So please, as my literally award-winning audience, do me one more solid, and join me in the hope that RAM 2 can one day be a game worth stealing from. Frequently, flagrantly, and without remorse.